It's the last week in Ordinary Time, so this weekend we'll be celebrating uh, the first Sunday of Advent. So that's coming up on the calendar. Also, this week we're celebrating Thanksgiving. So, just a reminder today, tomorrow, and Wednesday we do have our regular schedule. So, we had Mass this morning at 7. Tomorrow there is confession starting at 5:30 to 6:15 p.m. Then Mass following at 6:30 p.m. and then the Rosary after Mass. And then on Wednesday we have Mass at 8 a.m. Well, there's confessions from 7 a.m. to 7:45, and then Mass at 8 a.m. And then adoration continues throughout the day, closing at 7 p.m. Benediction about 10 till 7. So that's kind of our schedule. And then for Thursday, there's no 8 a.m. Mass. There's a 9 a.m. Mass for Thanksgiving. And we are collecting food for our St. Vincent de Paul Society. But just like we do the collection at Mass, there's no formal procession or anything like that. When you bring your food in, you can place it up near the altar, or after Mass, you can do that. And then on Friday, we'll have Mass at 8 o'clock. Hope everybody has a very wonderful Thanksgiving. I'm sure plans have probably changed for a few people. They kind of changed for me too, but I'll talk about that maybe later in the week. Today we've got three, two saints and a blessed on the liturgical calendar today. So it's a full, chock full day, and it's interesting. It kind of spans 2,000-year history of the Church. The first one is Clement I, a Pope and Martyr. He goes back to about the year 100. So Clement is listed, I think, as the fourth Pope, the third after St. Peter. So you have St. Peter, and they have Linus Cletus Clement. So he's fourth Pope, or the third after St. Peter. He is most known for his letter or his epistle to the Corinthians. It's to the Corinthians, right? I want to make sure I got that right. I'm looking up. Yes, to the Corinthians. So it seems it's not real clear exactly what the problem was in the church in Corinth, but there was factions fighting against each other, or some argument, and so Clement intervenes. It's the first time we see the Church of Rome intervening in another church. So the Church of Corinth, and Clement is very kind about what he's asking for unity and understanding among the members of the Church of Corinth. And it's not necessarily that he is saying, he's the Pope, so you have to do this, but it's more him speaking on behalf of the Church of Rome, trying to help out the church in Corinth. And we believe that he was martyred around the year 100 under the Emperor Trajan. We jump ahead then a good 4 or 5 centuries to get to St. Columban, who was an abbot. So a monk. It seems like that he had started doing his studies as a young man, but then temptations of the opposite sex kind of derailed that a little bit, and so he decided to enter the monastery in kind of response to those temptations. So he did in the Celtic area, so in Ireland, is where he was originally born. And so we're talking about he was born around the year 543. And so after he joins the monastery, there was this idea, or this desire at times, as a way to spread the gospel, that monks would voluntarily go into exile for love of God and to spread the gospel. So he goes across the channel into there in Gaul, so in France, and does some work there. It seems that the bishops there weren't real happy with him and his monks because they had a very disciplined spiritual life, and preached that, and called pretty much the lax clergy to task for their laxity, and that was not something that necessarily the bishops of that area were very fond of. And sometimes even too, the people, didn't like to be told that they needed to clean up their acts either. So he ends up moving and starting some in kind of the Zurich area. So now he's in Switzerland. That's the next place that he goes to, and founds some monasteries there. And again, there were, I think here's the quote, because of their vigorous methods and perhaps excessive zeal, they were not so well received by the people in the neighborhood of Zurich and of Bregenz, where they mainly preached. So eventually, that kingdom where he was goes to war with the one that he was in before, over in Gaul, and the one he's in now in Austrasia, and the Burgundy defeats them, and so he's like, well, I better move on again. So this time he ends up in Italy. He crosses the Alps, and goes to Milan. And this is when he's about 70 years old. So he's really trying, I think, to kind of settle down and, as they say, prepare for death. But he moves again and starts some more monasteries before his death in, I want to see if it gives exactly what the date was, in 615. So we have him during that 6th and 7th century time, is St. Columban, the abbot. And then finally, we have a modern saint, or blessed at this point, Blessed Miguel Agustin, priest and martyr. He's in Mexico, and he's dealing with what's called the Cristeros movement. He's part of that. When the Mexican government, there's kind of civil unrest, and the church comes under attack from a variety of places. And the Cristeros are the ones that are kind of resisting this attack upon the church. So he didn't start out that way. He starts studying as a Jesuit, but as the situation in Mexico is deteriorating, he ends up going to Spain to study. He does some study in Nicaragua. He's a Jesuit, so he's part of the Society of Jesus. So he had joined the novitiate, but as the political situation started to deteriorate, probably in the 1920s. This is when we're talking. So this is pretty modern in the church's eyes. So less than 100 years ago, or right around 100 years ago. And so he doesn't finish his novitiate. He goes back home, and eventually does kind of finish his studies and his ordained studies, like I said, in Spain and Nicaragua, Belgium. So it's in 30th of August of 1925 that he's finally ordained to the priesthood. He has some illness issues, but in July of 1926 he returns to Mexico, and more precisely to the Jesuit house in Mexico City. He gets back, and that's when the government passes laws that's illegal to hold religious services in Mexican churches. So he starts working underground with the Cristeros, and so he goes to live with his family, and he carries on a clandestine ministry. So he would celebrate the Eucharist, hear confessions, administer the other sacraments, conduct retreats, especially for workers, and organize care for the poor. And his brothers, Umberto and Roberto, also helped him. And so one of the things they were doing was helping to print and distribute literature for the League for the Defense of Religious Freedom. On 18th of November 1927, he was arrested along with his two brothers. They were falsely charged with this attempt to explode a bomb for the president-elect, General Alvaro Obregón. And so there was no trial, really. There was no evidence that linked them, but there was no trial either. And so really they wanted to make an example of Miguel of all the Catholics, and so he was killed by firing squad. And it says that as he stood waiting for the order to shoot, he raised his arms in the form of a cross and said firmly, "Viva Cristo Rey," the slogan of the Cristeros. So, live Christ the King. And so his brother Umberto was also executed, but Roberto was not at the last minute. It said the government may nevertheless have failed in its attempt to frighten Catholics. 20,000 people are said to have attended Miguel's burial, and news of his death traveled immediately around the world. He was soon one of the best known and most venerated martyrs of modern times. Because of the political situation, in Mexico. It's why his cause for canonization wasn't introduced until 1952. And he was beatified on the 25th of September, 1988. So that's the three, two saints and a blessed that we recognize on the liturgical calendar today. So it's a full day liturgically that way. So we'll ask for the intercession of St. Clement, St. Columban, and Blessed Miguel Pro for us this day. And I pray that everyone has a wonderful day as we continue to look out and pray for one another. I pray that God will bless you abundantly this day. Have a great day, everyone.